folks, welcome. Thanks for joining me for this video. Thanks for joining the two of us for this video. What's going on is I recently got an email from Kyra asking me if I do an informational interview with her, and I said yes, and I'm smiling because there's a backstory here. So let me let Kyra explain to us, like, what are we doing here?
Yes, Jen. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me today. And I really appreciate you having me here and chatting with me. So as Jen said, I'm Kyra. I'm a postdoc currently on a journey to identify my next career steps. So I actually found Jen, I found you on Twitter or X a few months ago. And I was really excited to see that you would be doing an all-day career workshop at Purdue, where I'm currently a postdoc. So I attended that workshop and I found your tips so helpful for focusing my career interests, for reframing my LinkedIn profile. And I've also just started revamping my resume as well. So after the workshop, I thought you would be a great person to talk to for a few reasons. The first is that I'm currently considering careers in writing or science writing, and it seems like you have a lot of experience with writing in different forms, from newsletters to freelance articles. But the second reason, and perhaps more importantly, is that I realized what you do with your own career counseling business is really inspiring. And it sounds like an exciting career path that I'm interested in exploring. And frankly, I think it's something that we need more of for people with PhDs. You know, we might not necessarily know how to market our transferable skills or even know the types of jobs we want to do after completing a PhD. So with all of that being said, I'd love to start out by asking you how you got started in your own career path with career counseling, and how you started your business and started to build your brand.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Kyra. Thanks for explaining and thanks for allowing us to do this recorded, which is
Of course.
generous. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Okay, so your question, how to get started. Well, first let me say that I like to use the term career coach, and I don't mean to like correct you. Well, I am correcting you on that.
No, that's fine.
And
Yeah.
the reason is that yeah, I don't want to usurp the job that career counselors do. There's like the training that they have that I don't have.
Sure.
But let's talk about the training that I do have. So I finished my PhD and I did it in history. It's totally unrelated, right? You can see some of the books that I still have. So I did a PhD in history, and then I was like, oh, that was cool, but now what? When I tell the story, I often say, like, and then I flailed around and I, did some stuff. But one of the things that I ended up doing was that I hired a career coach. And this, like, I'd never heard of that before. The only other than a sports coach, the only time I'd heard the term coach was like a life coach, which sounds so ridiculous, right? Like, it sounds like an absurd thing. So I was like, well, but you know what? I mean, heck, you only live once. This woman on an online forum that I read, and that's how long ago, right? Was this the days before social media? No, we had social media, but like we still had forums.
Just looked a little different, maybe,
She offered this like free introductory call. So I was like, it's no big deal, right? Like anyways, I'm making this story too long. And I had the similar thought that you described to like, oh, what you do is really cool. Anyways, I did work. This is Hillary Hutchinson. I worked with her for like, I think 4 months quite intensively. And that was really life-changing. And so one of the things that I thought was, yeah, what you do is really cool and I want to explore it. And so I did read about coaching, career coaching. I did some informational interviews, and then I decided months later so it wasn't like an immediate thing, months later to sign up for a course on how to coach. And then that's under the general kind of life coach style. And I'm smiling because of what I just said. And at that point, I didn't know that I was going to pursue this as a career, like at all. It was just like, okay, this is one course. It's, not outrageously expensive. It's not like outrageously time consuming. I know that these skills will help me in my life. And in the course of that first course, the instructor encouraged us to get practicing. And so I did. And I had started my website from PhD to Life, and I'd started on Twitter when I was working with Hillary. And so when it came time to get practice, of course, like I went online. It was like, who wants to help me practice? And that's how, without intending to, I ended up starting a business, helping folks who, the way I framed it was that I was helping folks that were a couple steps behind me in the process, right? Not that I was this big expert, absolutely not, but that, they were a couple of steps behind me and I could help them get a couple of steps further. Anyways, I could go on and on and on, but that's like one way to tell the story of how I got started.
It sounds like that happened pretty naturally for you, actually, like in the process of kind of hiring your own career coach or working with your own career coach. It kind of developed into something that then, became what it is today. So that's actually really interesting to hear.
Yeah. And I always say that I think a lot of jobs are broadly similar. So the work isn't, from my perspective, to go and identify like, as some sort of mathematical equation, like that one perfect job that is right for you. Because the reality, I think, is there's lots of different jobs that could be right for you. And so it just depends on what you come across and who you meet, right? And like the timing and all those good things. So it could have ended up being something else, but it ended up being this. Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. Right. Yeah. There's no one like predestined career path for all of us. And we just,
yeah.
Sometimes it's just about being in the right place at the right time or all of that. So you mentioned, actually, I was going to ask this later, but since you mentioned the training and coaching program that you did, I was wondering which one that was. I was looking into the ICF a little bit. That's like the big coaching group out there. So yeah, I was just wondering if you had some advice about that.
Yeah, this is a great question. And so the training that I pursued, so I did that first course and then I did a few others, and they were ICF accredited courses. The company that I did it with is still around, and it's called Mentor Coach. And I chose that because a lot of the folks who work for that company, or who are the instructors and the founders, have PhDs themselves. And I appreciated that kind of research-based focus, in addition to the ICF credentialing process. The ICF is the International Coach Federation. So I liked that combination, right? Like, it made sense for me. I encourage you, Kyra, and like anyone listening that's also interested in this, to sort of update yourself on what's going on now, because this was some years ago for me. The course were literally on the phone, like they were conference calls,
wow.
right? And like that's just not how people do things anymore. So yeah, I would, just make sure that you do your own research, but I mean it in like a real way.
No, absolutely. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of programs out there. So, having one name is a good starting place, but definitely worth digging into a little bit more.
Yeah. And I will say one more thing about that is that although I did take courses and they were very important to me, I mean, I wouldn't have started my business necessarily if I hadn't been in that first course, right? So obviously hugely impactful, and the skills that I learned, very important for me. What was I trying to say is that I never earned the like end credential. Coaching is not a regulated industry, in the US or Canada, for example. So I don't need like the credential, and you can like go online and buy one anytime you want. But like the ICF credential is an industry leading one. I never ended up pursuing that, simply because pursuing it didn't align with my goals anymore. And that is not a criticism.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to say that, right? Like whether you need to finish something is different from whether you start something. Same with a PhD, by the way.
That's true. I mean, I feel like that's the same for any career step too. And it seems like you know, had the self-reflection of like, okay, is this serving me anymore? So that, yeah, that's good advice that, yeah, you can always change course, I guess. So I wanted to ask you as well, what is your day-to-day life like as a career coach?
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so let me set the scene here for folks. I do two main things in my business now. Nowadays, I'm like, what are we talking in 2000, the end of 2023? Yes. I do two main things. I put together workshops, keynotes, primarily workshops for clients that include universities and related organizations, where my audience is like Kyra postdocs and grad students, sometimes, other folks, but that's like the big part of my work. That's paid, of course. And then the second part of my work, the second kind of main thing is that I run something called the PhD Career Clarity Program, and that is for individuals to sign up for. And within that course, I wear many hats, from a instructor, teacher, guide, group coach, discussion leader, facilitator, community, or blah, 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 right? So just to say, and almost everything I do is online. And that has always been true going back like over a decade now. So what does my day look like? Okay, so I set some context. What I like to do is on Mondays, I don't have meetings. On Mondays, I don't have meetings. Now, that's not 100% of the time, but like I try very hard. If somebody wants to do a meeting with me or do a workshop with me, and like, unless they're like really set in stone, no, right? And I like that because it allows me to like go into the week more gently, right? And if I need an extra day off, I can do it. It also gives me an extended amount of time for creative work.
Mhm.
So that's Mondays. The rest of the days, Tuesday to Friday, what I almost always do is I host co-working meetings at 9 in the morning. At 9 in the morning, I host co-working meetings, and I do this on a service called Flow Club. And I really appreciate the structure for that, because the temptation to just, scroll Twitter and not get to work is very strong. So that's like a structure that I build in for myself. And then the rest of the day, like that's an hour. The rest of the day, it really depends. I don't have that many meetings in the grand scheme of things, although it changes week to week. And so I spent a lot of time, like as Kyra, you mentioned in the beginning, I spent a lot of time on content creation, what those of us right call it, tweets and LinkedIn posts and writing emails, but also like updating course lessons, or doing more creative work like building slide decks or Google Docs that you experienced at the workshops I did a couple weeks back. So there's a mix of like meetings and more creative work, I would say, as well as, let me not forget, there's a lot of what I call like administrative work. And that is the work of running the business, as opposed to the work that I get paid to do in the business, right? So it's like it's like three hats. I am the boss of the business, right? I'm the CEO and the project manager, whatever, like whatever terms you want to use. I am the person that is doing all of the work that I get paid to do. And then I'm also the one that is doing all the administrative annoying things like bookkeeping and updating the project management software that I use to make sure that I'm like always on task. Wow, that was a very long answer to a short question. There's a lot of
No,
variety, but
yeah, it definitely sounds like you do wear many hats. And I guess even the administrative things are often the hidden things about like being an entrepreneur. So important to know that, you know, that takes up a portion of your time as well.
Yes. And people will have a different balance of things. Like I personally enjoy the bookkeeping. And so I choose to do that. Whereas like another friend of mine, also named Jennifer, she pays someone to do that because she doesn't want to see any of it. Right. So whereas like I will do that myself. I like to use software. I have like the tech stack, as people call it. I have a long list of software that I use to help me run my business, whereas other people are much more streamlined. Like there's different choices to make, right? Like you don't have to have the same structure to the business as everybody else.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, everyone does it a little bit differently, I guess. I also wanted to ask you what skills and personal qualities feel most important for success in this type of career path?
Yeah. Okay. That is a great question. And so my answer, of course, will reflect my own failings and strengths. Okay. What's important for success? For me, I am not a natural born project manager, I don't think. So building those skills have been really important. Picking software, I use something called MeisterTask. There's lots of options there. That's just the one I use. And then building that up so that every task that I do in my business is in there, right? I almost don't do anything at all without it being a like tick box in my software. And that's really, really, really important because I mean, I'm not as busy as a lot of people, but I have lots of different things going on. And there's sort of, anyways, you understand. So that's been important for me. Yeah. Why? Yeah. Oof. Communication in general, this is a giant, broad skill area. I think communication is so important. And the particular types of communication that you want to focus on, you know, you can make decisions about that. But I've really invested time in social media. So that type of writing and the social media I like is text heavy. Community building. This is a real strength of mine, if I may say so myself. And it's something that I employ on social media within my program, my career clarity program. If I say so myself, I think I do that in workshops too. There's a sense of community building, and I think that's been really important for me in the way that I want to have a business that helps build community. Yeah, what am I forgetting? I think ultimately it's about building on things that are strengths of mine. Right? And not trying to be an expert on things that I suck at. Although there are weeks where I have to solve a very thorny accounting issue, like the client overpaid me, and what do I do? But generally, to try and like focus on doing the work that I can do well and enjoy doing. I mean, I'm my own boss. Like, what is the point of this if I hate my life?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it sounds like there are ways to kind of build upon some of your natural strengths in order to make it something that's fulfilling for you, as well as, you know, providing a really helpful service to others.
And let me give you a specific example of that. So my former coach, the one who like changed my life years ago, Hillary Hutchinson, she co-wrote a book. I'm gonna get the name wrong, but it was something like How to Be an Academic Coach. Maybe that was the title. And I remember in her book, she explicitly, the advice they give is, you know, don't bother marketing your services on Twitter. And I see your face because you said at the beginning you found me on Twitter.
Yeah.
Twitter has been like amazing for my business and so important. I mean, I also was blogging, you know, back in the day when that was more of a thing, but Twitter has been really vital, and I still get clients from Twitter. And And so it's not that Hillary's advice is wrong. It's just to say there's not one way of doing this. Right. And so
Sure.
for
Yeah.
me, Twitter was a strength and therefore it worked. And for other people,
Right.
it's not and therefore it doesn't.
Hmm. I think that's actually really helpful advice. You don't need to, like, obviously there are places where you can learn things and grow, but you don't need to try to fit a mold that, someone else is doing it this way, so therefore I have to do it this way in order to succeed.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's really true.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely helpful to keep in mind. Yeah, I think you touched on this a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you what excites you about your career and then maybe what challenges you.
Nah. Yeah. One of the things I think is really cool is that I get to do work that manifests, it's kind of an awkward way of putting it, that aligns with my strengths. So I get to show up as who I am and want to be.
Mhm.
And, I mean, one could like roll their eyes and say, but that's because you're self-employed. Sure. But like, I got to make money, right? Like I can't
Mhm.
just, but yeah, I think it's really cool. And that of course requires that I know what my values and strengths and priorities and all that stuff
Sure.
is, right? And to update that. But for me, that's really cool. And it is always so gratifying when other people are drawn to that, right? Like it's nice to, when a sale comes in, of course, but it's also really nice to have what you put out in the world resonate with other people. Like it's very gratifying because it's coming like from me, like, right? Like it's really coming from me. Um, I don't remember your question was. Please direct me.
That was the what excites you, but
Oh
the
yeah.
next part was what challenges you about it.
Yeah. Okay, so I definitely procrastinate when I'm starting a new workshop, let's say, although I'm trying to get better at that. So, there are things like that. What I mean, silly things like people yelling at me on Twitter. I mean, that's annoying, but
Mm,
whatever.
yeah.
Um, I think the things that frustrate me are like I yell at software in the same way the professors yell at like D2L or Brightspace or whatever. Right? Like, I have tearing out hair moments to like, oh my
Of
God,
course.
why is
Don't we all?
ConvertKit like? So of course there's things like that. And it's good to be in community with other people. It's good to take breaks, right? It's good to like give
Right.
myself grace. And nothing is ultimately that important. Like I
Mhm.
can make a
Mhm.
mistake. The worst thing that happens is I refund someone their money.
Mhm.
I mean, right? Doesn't happen very often, but like it's not that big a deal, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's such helpful perspective just in general that, mistakes are not the end of the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I also wanted to, you touched on money a little bit, and as someone who is self-employed, and especially maybe when you were just starting out, how did you start to build your own sustainable income? How did you make it as something that you could do full time?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. And I acknowledge Mm, I acknowledge my parents are boomers who own outright their house. And so my worst case scenario, kind of in the back of my mind, I always know that the worst case scenario for me personally is I take the cat and we go to Ottawa. We move back in with my parents, which nobody wants except maybe the cat. But like it gives like I acknowledge that, right? I think it's a
Hmm.
meaningful, it's meaningful, right? That it means that I was freer to take more risks. My parents have also given me some money over the years.
Hmm.
And so that knowing that they can do that, that's been helpful too. Um, and I'm a big fan of take advantage of whatever privileges you have. If it's a
Hmm.
spouse or a partner, with a good income and benefits, awesome. right? Like whatever it is, I'm a big fan. Money is something that I'm always aware of. And I will also say that it's a thorny issue. Pricing is a thorny issue, especially for folks like me who are targeting our services at clients who are not wealthy, and who might be
Yeah,
in stages of life where they are especially not wealthy right now.
absolutely.
So those of us in this space typically are very aware of this. But one thing, one statement I'll say about that is that I think that it is anti-feminist to charge so little money that your business is unsustainable. Like that doesn't help anybody, especially women running businesses. Like it's one thing to be at the very beginning and to not know what you're doing yet, right? Of course, but like once you sort of have a sense of what you're doing and who you're doing it for, you got to charge enough to make your business successful. And nobody wants to work with somebody who is burnt out, right? Like you can't.
Right.
So raise your prices. This is often advice that folks like me will give to folks starting out is like, yeah, you triple what you're thinking of charging because there's only so many billable hours to use that term, that you get in a week because you're busy doing all sorts of other stuff, the marketing and the administration and the strategizing, etc. Does that make
I think
sense?
that's, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's such a helpful tip for everyone. Yeah. I want to be mindful of the time and just wrap up by asking if you have any other just general advice as I consider this type of career, or if there are other people that you would recommend that I talk to or connect with.
Yeah. Okay, great question, both of those. So I would say if you're interested in helping like grad students, for example, or postdocs in navigating their careers, there are lots of jobs to use that term. So there are folks that you can chat with, places that you can learn about within universities and also within organizations, for example. And there might be, so there's definitely people like with jobs where they do this type of work, whether they are called career educators or the words are escaping me, program managers or associate directors of postdoctoral affairs or whatever it is, right? Like there's a number of different things. So you can certainly, if you're interested in that type of like more of a secure role with a salary, you can definitely target those folks. And my sense is that often, at least when it comes to university hiring, those offices are open to more recent PhDs. This is my kind of like what I see. I mean, I'm not promising they'd hire you, but I do think that they are open to that because they value the perspective of folks just coming out of academia. If self-employment is something that you want to pursue, that's very exciting. And you have a lot of flexibility to be creative here. And I am a big fan, right? So general advice, I'm a big fan of just getting started quickly, telling people what you want to do, starting to get clients right away and not use the seeking of additional training as an excuse to not take action.
Yeah.
Right. And I am not putting down training at all, just to say it's good to like get started. And because you will change your mind. I started out doing one-on-one coaching. That was like the thing that I did for years. And that was my main thing. Then I ran a related but separate business with a business partner for a few years. And that was our main thing. And now I have my own business, like just me again. And I do very little one-on-one coaching now, actually. So even though I would have called myself a career coach for PhDs for all of those past 10 years, I've done lots of different things.
Sure. I think that's helpful. I think it's so easy to just be like, oh, I'm not ready yet to really like try to start something new. But yeah, maybe we just all need to hear that it's, it's never too early to start. So
Absolutely. You are ready to help one person right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, awesome. In terms of who else you should chat with, let me think on that and get back to you,
Awesome.
Kyra. I'll send you an email about that.
Great. That sounds great. Thank you.
Let's
I
end
think
this informational interview. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think you answered all of my questions, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let me stop the recording, everybody, and Kyra and I can debrief together.
Sounds good.